Okay, now wait a minute now. Ladies and gentlemen, the police chief of Baltimore is telling parents to keep their kids at home. The police chief of Baltimore, let me get this, I want to get his exact words. What did this guy say? Here it is, I got it. Take control of your kids. Okay? What do kids have to do with this? Hang on. Now the mayor of Philadelphia has spoken up. And the mayor of Philadelphia says parents are responsible for their kids. Parents need to keep their kids in line, something like that. And now here is Kwesi Mfume. Do you remember him? The old, Bobby Moore, was that his name? I can never remember what Kwesi's real name, first name, was. But he's a former member of Congress. Didn't he run the LCP for a while? And here's Kwesi Mfume. He's on Fox this morning saying, I implore parents to know where your children are. Now, folks, what's that? What do kids have to do with this? Hang on. If you know, don't think I'm an idiot. I'm leading up to something here. Greetings and welcome. It's great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network and the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. The telephone number is 800-282-2882 and the email address rushbo@eibnet.com. You know, there's so many advantages to getting older. You know, I have always wanted to be older my whole life. And now that I am what many would consider to be older, I don't regret it. One of the great things about being older, if you paid attention when you were younger, is you see how things really aren't new. You see how things really don't change. Now, to a lot of people, what's happening in Baltimore coming off of Ferguson is, oh, God, it's horrible. Why, what are we going to do? This is worse than it's ever been. And it probably isn't. I remember the riots of the 60s in Watts. And I, of course, remember Selma. And I remember Rodney King. And I remember race riots frequently, cyclically, happening all over this country. Well, actually, not all over. That's actually an interesting point about this, too. They don't happen all over the country. They happen where the left runs the show. You know what one of the most fascinating things to me has been, and there are many fascinating things about this, yesterday afternoon when all this started happening, I'm looking at stuff, trying to stay up to speed on it, and I'm hearing all these officials, elected officials and otherwise in Baltimore, blaming no jobs, blaming poor education, blaming all this cultural rot. And I really was taken aback. I said, well, you guys have been running this show for I don't know how long. I mean, there only have been two white mayors in Baltimore in decades. And both of them were related to Nancy Pelosi, by the way. Thomas L.J.G. D'Alessandro and Thomas J.G. D'Alessandro III or something. Those are the only two white mayors in Baltimore, and I don't know how long. Baltimore is 60% black. The police department's run by African Americans. Everything, we got an African American president. Where's all this oppression coming from? Who's doing all this oppressing? And that's the one thing that hasn't changed. It's another thing that hasn't changed. The excuses given, the reasons given for this. And every time there are riots, they are justified by people on the left. That hasn't changed either. There is one thing that could be strikingly different about this circumstance from others, and most notably recently Ferguson. And that is, you really have to look hard to find a racial component in this. You don't have a white police chief. You don't have a white mayor. You don't have a white cop that gunned down a supposed innocent young man walking down the street pondering his first days at college. What you have here, We have man-made city warming, if you want to look at it this way. To borrow a little bit from the modern-day global warming meme, Baltimore and Ferguson burn due to man-made liberalism. That's what's on display here. Man-made liberalism. Political climate change is destroying America's urban core. Not rising sea levels, not melting glaciers, not hurricanes, none of these things that we've been told are going to be the end of us. Nope, it's man-made liberalism that is destroying America's urban core. Rapid expansion of government at the expense of free markets, private property rights, school choice, intact families, controlled immigration. All that's gone. All that's been thrown out. Other than the rapid expansion of government has taken place at the expense of free markets, private property rights, school choice, intact families. You know things are bad when the gangs of the city are the ones who come together to negotiate how to solve the problem. You know you've lost control. And there are elected leaders in Baltimore running around proudly saying that the Crips and the Bloods are going to work today to clean up the mess. Well, then who runs the city? Obviously, the Crips and the Bloods run the city. At least you could conclude that. Now we've got rampant immigration. Private property rights come second to protester rights. School choice, there isn't any. Parents are forced in these liberal-run cities to send their kids to absolutely dilapidated buildings to be taught a bunch of liberal drivel that's only making them angrier and unhappier. And all of this is the direct result of Democrat Party politics and policies. There's not a Republican anywhere near here. There isn't a conservative anywhere near here. Now, Ferguson, it was easy. I'll tell you something else. I'll tell you, when cities get too hot for comfort, remember people can't cool the planet, but they can burn down their own neighborhoods, right? This hands up, don't shoot thing, that lie, it was just as destructive as I imagined it would be. It was just as damaging as I thought it would be. Community organizers involved in Ferguson, bought and paid for by George Soros, and probably now in Baltimore. And all of this is happening because some people want it to. Now, you may think that's a controversial statement to make, but folks, that's the benefit of here being 64 years old. I've seen this before, and all of you my age have. I'll bet many of you my age are looking at all this and saying, been there, done that. You're trying to find something new about it. You're trying to find something unique about it because it does seem like it's worse than ever, that it always does when you're living through it. But when Rodney King was happening, everybody thought that was the worst that had happened. And when Selma was going on, everybody thought that was the worst that had happened. When the Watts riots, oh my God, this is the worst. Everybody thinks it's the worst when it's happening. Ferguson, oh my God, look, I got people from outside the city are being bussed in here to protest. It's been there, done that. So what is different? What is different is that in the White House is the first African-American president who, among many things that he assured us and promised us, this kind of thing was not going to happen anymore because people were going to be happier. People were going to be more loving. This was a new kind of politics, we were told. There was going to be bipartisanship. The old political arguments that had been tried and failed decade after decade were going to wash away and be replaced by a new brand of sunshine and sunlight shining on everything and lifting everybody to new levels of height. Hasn't happened. Just the exact opposite. How can that be? Why does this only happen in communities that have been run by Democrats and liberals for decades? And every time it happens, you can guarantee who's going to get blamed. You can guarantee that race is going to be made a factor when it isn't in some cases. You're guaranteed to hear people demanded government get bigger. You're going to hear that the protesters are oppressed by an unjust and immoral country. You're going to hear that these riots are not really tied to a specific event. It's just the building rage of African Americans since the days of the founding of this country. Thank you, Mark Lamont Hill, who made that point on CNN last night. Yes, there's a lot to share with you here during the course of the 3-hour busy broadcast today, and we will. But one thing, back to the kids. Yes, I know the mayor is trying to walk back our comments on giving the protesters space. We'll get to that. You know where this woman graduated college? Oberlin College, where Lena Dunham went, made up the fake rape story. This happens to be one of the most liberal college campi in the country. And she got a political science degree there. So she's been inculcated. She's been indoctrinated. She's been taught what she was raised to believe has been confirmed by the mentors that she probably admired and respected when she was in college. But why all of these references to kids? I thought this was about some poor guy who was horribly injured by mean-spirited cops when they threw him into a metal compartment in a police van named Freddie Gray. While he was screaming, apparently in terrible pain, we learned later that spinal cord had been 80% severed, but nobody knows how that happened or even when that happened. Metal compartment, by the way, was added to the story to make it look just a police van. It was an average police van they threw him into. But if this is about Freddie Gray, why are all these city officials honing in on parents and demanding that parents keep a sharp eye on their kids? Because this may not be about Freddie Gray at all, folks. And if you've been watching cable news carefully, you might have seen it, because what I'm going to tell you after the break here gets mentioned in a little trickle. A crawl, they call it, text at the bottom of the screen. But that narrative doesn't fit the larger narrative here. What they're desperately looking for now is a way to blame this on Republicans, even though there isn't one anywhere in sight. They're looking for a way to blame this on the 1%, even though they aren't anywhere in sight. I hear these people, no jobs. You've been running the show. You've got the jobs plans, we thought. Oh, there are no jobs, and there's poverty, and there's no money. Well, you've been giving money away left and right ever since you've been running the governments. What do you mean there isn't any money? People don't have, well, where's it gone? All the money you've been giving away. And what are you going to flood the market with illegal immigrants for if there's no jobs now? You're going to bring in a whole bunch of new Democrat voters that you're going to act like you care more about, these newly arriving Hispanic illegals, than you do about the African Americans. And don't think the African Americans aren't noticing this. Think that might have them a little ticked off? You'll never get anybody to admit that, but I wouldn't put it past. I'd be totally bummed out if I were a Democrat, loyal Democrat voter, 50 years, African American, listening to all the promises, believing all the promises. And after 50 years, I'm still angry, maybe angrier than ever. I'm still unhappy, maybe unhappier than ever. No end in sight to my misery and anger. And then all of a sudden they tell me that another 12 million illegal immigrants are going to be granted amnesty and they're going to flood the job market, and I already can't find one. And it's my Democrat Party doing this? Yeah, and then I'm told, don't worry, we're looking out for you. Your real enemy is the Republicans, and we're protecting you from them. You know, you've done a great job of that. There aren't any Republicans anywhere near Baltimore, Maryland, in any of this mess.